Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the book of Esther, and we're in chapter 5. Last time we were together, Esther's kinsman Mordecai had come to her and had asked her to intervene for the Jews. Haman, who let's not forget, is descended from the Amalekites. He is an Agagite. He's descended from the king of Amalek, which Saul did not completely destroy. And now he's here at the highest levels of government in Persia. And but Esther is also at the highest levels of government. She's queen. Mordecai, her uncle, who is also in government work himself, has run afoul of Haman because he did not make obeisance sufficiently to suit Haman's notions, and therefore Haman took the opportunity to hatch a plot to exterminate all Jews. And he got the king to sign a decree, which is now irrevocable because he signed it with his signet ring. And so Mordecai, of course, has come to Esther and said, "You need to talk to the king about this." And Esther said, "I just can't go to see the king. It's not the law. I have to wait till he summons me." And he hasn't summoned me for 30 days. That seems unusual for me, but maybe not so unusual. We're told earlier when Esther was chosen to be king how much King Xerxes, King Ahasuerus, loved her. He loved her more than any other woman, and he was so pleased with her. But there was a lot of political intrigue going on in Persia at this time. Let's not forget this follows the Battle of Thermopylae and the failure of the second Persian campaign incursion into Greece, and there are multiple assassination plots and attempts that have to be guarded against and foiled. In addition to the one that we've learned about in the book of Esther. So the fact that he's otherwise occupied and not taking the time to spend quality time with the queen might not be so surprising. But Esther is putting her life on the line to go unsummoned to the king's presence. So let's read chapter 5. Came about on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's rooms, and the king was sitting on his royal throne in the throne room opposite the entrance to the palace. And it happened when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, she obtained favor in his sight. And the king extended to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand. So Esther came near and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What is troubling you, Queen Esther? And what is your request? Even to half the kingdom it will be given to you." And Esther said, "If it please the king, may the king and Haman come this day to the banquet that I prepared for him." And the king said, "Bring Haman quickly, so that we may do as Esther desires." So the king and Haman came to the banquet which Esther had prepared. And as they drank wine at the banquet, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? For it shall be granted to you. What is your request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be done." So Esther said, "My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and do what I request, may the king and Haman come to the banquet which I shall prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king says." So she puts them off for another day, and they arrange to go. So Haman is really happy with this. He sees Mordecai and becomes even angry at Mordecai now that he has himself received this honor from the queen. It is unprecedented. The queen being seen by someone other than the king and outside the bounds of the palace of the women was not done. In fact, that's what Vashti refused to do. But now Esther is requesting not just to see the king, but to see Haman. And it is evidence of the great love the king has for her that he grants this request. Anyway, he goes home, Haman does, elated that he's been given this honor, but angry at Mordecai. And he says to his wife, he's such a twerp, "All this does not satisfy me. Every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate, And Zeresh, his wife, and all of his friends said, "Have the gallows 50 cubits high, and in the morning ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go joyfully to the banquet." And the advice pleased Haman, so he had those gallows made. Okay, now let's remind ourselves that gallows, this is not rope and a noose. That those would not be invented for, let's see, this is around 500 BC, 470, 480 BC. So for another 2,000 years almost, or more than 2,000 years. Anyway, it's not the technology they had. This is someone who is going to be impaled on a sharp pole and then hung to die after being impaled on that pole and left there for the birds to devour as they die. That's what Haman has planned to do with Mordecai. 50 cubits is 75 feet, at least. So that's how high it's going to be. 7, 8 stories high. He's going to hang his body for all to see, and for the vultures and the crows, for the birds to pluck out his eyes and eat him as he dies. That's what he has planned for Mordecai. God, however, has other plans. We'll talk about those next time. Thank you so much for joining me for the 5 good minutes with the Word.